Good evening and welcome to Struggle to Success and Wellbeing. Apologies for the late start. We had a few technical issues, but we are live and we are looking forward to this week's session, which will be about relationships. This week we have Viv Amun, Shalina Celestine and Joseph the Dreamer joining us to discuss relationships and how they can impact us positively and negatively in our business, in our careers, and in our personal and family experiences. And now I'll hand over to our host, Basil.
Hi, good evening, all. Pleasure to be here again. My name is Basil Links, and I'm here as one of the hosts alongside Marlo, Morris, and Odisha. And relationships, it's a very emotive kind of subject. I mean, as a businessman, I firmly believe that business is made on relationships. You know, I do business with people, and it's the relationship or it's the intimacy of that relationship that makes it successful. So just to start off, in terms of from a business perspective, why would I say that relationships are important? And that's because when you do business, you know, we have contracts, we have major aspects, we have minor aspects of contracts, but it's the contracts are just the rules, it's just the framework. What really makes and what's helped me to be successful over the 35 years of my career has been the relationships that I've developed. And what that means is if you nurture a good relationship, when things go wrong, it's more likely that you're going to be able to recover that position. It's more likely that you're going to be able to maintain the business because people are more accepting. So I've always found that by focusing on developing the relationship with whoever I've been doing business with, it's helped me to be more successful. And eventually it transcends business. It becomes, you know, a friendship. And you can over years, you can end up having a real genuine friendship, almost like a brotherhood, or with your business associates, based on the quality of your relationship. What do you think, Milo?
Well, my dad always says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And right now I'm a student in this session because relationships has not been something that I've been successful with. So I'm here to learn.
Really?
I'm here to learn from the experts, from yourself, from the guests. I'm excited to learn what tools they picked up in terms of business, in their family, with their relationship with their spouse, their girlfriend, their partners, because these are things that I'm going to need moving forward in the future. Don't laugh too hard, Nisha.
So, Basil, you've been in business for how many years now?
Yeah, about 35 years, yeah.
And you are also a landlord?
Yeah.
So I've come from a fashion buying background, and I've also been an account manager. So relationships have been really important for me in basically getting customers to spend money. So how would you deal with a relationship that wasn't going very well? So for example, with Pempanzi, which is your retail outlet,
one of his brands,
one of his shops, you depend on your suppliers to stock your shop. So if a negative situation happened where they told you they were delivering a really brilliant product that was flying off the shelves and they didn't turn up with it, how would you manage that?
Yeah. I think now, first of all, I don't look at my suppliers just as suppliers. All of my suppliers, as far as I'm concerned, we're business partners. And part of my role as a business partner is to add value. And that's what I think is the key to relationships. Do I add value to you? as an individual or as a business. And if I actually go out
just
of my
taking notes as you said that,
I go out of my way to add value. Now, what that means is, as opposed to a supplier coming to my business with a portfolio of goods saying to me, I would like you to buy these, I actually encourage I act as a business development manager for them. So I understand my customers, I understand my customers' needs, I understand where the gaps are within my range of products, although I keep 4,000 products across the board, in the Pen Pamsy product range, but we still have gaps, and the market evolves, so there are always new products and new demands and things change. Now, I make it my responsibility to challenge my suppliers, to let them know what my needs are, so that actually when they're looking to create year-on-year growth in terms of their business sales, they don't have to try and pitch to me, because I'm giving them a list. I will say to them, look, I need this, that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 products. Now you either develop them or source them and supply them.
So what if they don't deliver it? So if you have an agreement, you have an agreed delivery date, and that delivery date doesn't occur,
doesn't happen. Okay,
how
so
do you manage
in
that?
all relationships, you do get sort of blips, but generally speaking, I would try to actually get involved. Do you need help? Is it a cash flow issue? Do you want me to pay in advance? Particularly if that product is something that I'm going to be able to sell. Do you want me to pick it up? I would try and drill down, within the problem to try and find out, why is it that you can't supply? You're pushing at an open door here. Now, by me going that extra mile, that demonstrates to my suppliers that it really is a partnership, and it really is a relationship, not just a buyer-seller situation. And the thing about it is, we do get to, from time to time, we get to a position where we fall out. Sometimes it can be quite heated, but from my perspective, it's business. At the end of the day, and if I fail, we all fail. If you fail, we all fail. So therefore,
let me pick up on that, because you mentioned fall out and fail. But before that, you said you add value, you help.
Absolutely.
You problem solve, and you partner.
That's right.
These are all positives. But this show is about struggling to get to that good stuff.
Absolutely.
So falling out. How do you deal with falling out? When you fall out with somebody.
Well, when I talk about fall out,
can you describe a situation where you actually did fall out?
Right. We all fall out from time to time. For argument's sake, you may fall out because you haven't paid quickly enough. You may fall out because, you've potentially cancelled an order. You're
not kept to your word.
Or not necessarily not kept to your word. Sometimes you can preliminarily book a certain amount of volume, or they can preempt, that you're going to have, say for argument's sake, in Eat of Eden, there'll be a time when we order goods regularly. Our suppliers may turn around and forward order from their suppliers, anticipating an order, and then we end up finding another supplier, or we end up not necessarily having that demand, and they get stuck with the stock.
Okay, so when you fall out and you find another supplier,
I try not to.
Some people fall out and then perpetually go and find something better. Find something different.
The point is this, if you've got a genuine relationship with your supplier, and you're genuinely, my job as a businessman is to add value and to deliver a profit for my organization. If you're charging me 40% more than an alternative supplier, it will be an issue for me. And maybe I need to challenge you to look at your supply chain to see where you can reduce your prices. So it's not so much about falling out. You don't always have to see things exactly in the same way. But I think what makes things work, because the big thing is that it has to be a sustainable situation. It has to be sustainable to you as a supplier, which means that you have to make money ongoing. You have to make a profit. It has to be sustainable to me. Otherwise, it's not going to have any kind of longevity. So the reality of the situation is, yes, you do fall out, but as long as you stay focused, as long as you don't take it personal, you understand it's business, and there's no problem that can't be resolved. And sometimes, you know, I take a hit. Sometimes I'll take a hit on the product if I can afford to take a hit just to move the product on. Even if I move it on at a loss or move it on and break even and not make a profit, if it gets you out of a trouble, so you've got too much stock, you anticipated it, I'm trying to, you know, I'm cancelling the order, you know, you're upset about it. Sometimes I'll take it anyway and offload the stock simply to maintain the relationship. And I think it's when you need it most is when you're in a problem situation, and that's when it pays dividends, the fact that you've nurtured the relationship.
So, Basil, would you say that your business relationships, have you brought any, have those business relationships been learned from relationships from growing up, from relationships with like personal relationships? Can you see any? Can you see any similarities between how you deal with your supply, how you deal with your business and how
where did you learn that from?
Yeah, so like family.
Well, I learned under my mentor, yeah, who's now and is deceased, but you know, I worked alongside a businessman probably about 22 years. I started as a teenager, and you know, I learned what I know about business, or the foundations about what I know. A lot of it came from him. And I guess, yes, the answer to your question is yes. I do try and apply some of my lessons that I've learned in business to my personal relationships. And one of them is that I also, within all of my intimate relationships, personal relationships, I always seek to add value. Yeah, because as far as I'm concerned, if I'm not adding value to your life, yeah, you know, what good am I in terms of a personal relationship? Whether you're a mate or whether you're a female, you know, I have to add value. Yeah. Which means that I go out of my way to add value, and I hope that that's reciprocated. Yeah. If ever I need help.
So you would say that a key attribute for any relationship is adding value.
Absolutely.
And that could be in any way.
It could be emotionally, it could be financially, it could be just by mentoring and adding value, you know, giving wisdom, you know, it could be brainstorming and solving problems. But if I can't add value, what's the point of us having a friendship or a relationship?
And is that reciprocal as well? So you would want your partner to add value to you as well?
And if they can't add value...
So what's the opposite of that? Or not adding value? If
being
you're
a liability.
You're subtracting.
Being a liability. I don't want to be a liability to anyone.
So have you ever been in a situation where people have subtracted from you?
Absolutely.
Talk to me about that.
From my perspective, are you talking business or personally?
What I'm saying is, we're going to always talk about the lights, and you know, everybody likes the successes. But this is a balanced show, so we want to talk about the struggles as well.
Absolutely.
Without becoming too personal.
there's been several situations where people have been liabilities, or they haven't, you know, really valued the relationship.
How's that affected you or your business?
When
they've subtracted or not added value.
Okay.
Like, for example, your staff, maybe.
Well, I'll tell you a story. There was a staff member. I was employed. I actually made her a director of a company that I used to run. The company was very successful. I had about 25 staff. This is going back to 2010, 2012. And he turned over just under £1 million a year. It was a courier business. And I basically took a step back and allowed this person to run the business. Paid her a good bonus and a good salary. It was a part-time role, yeah, because most of our people were in the field, yeah. So it was literally an administrative role. She had access to my bank account. She withdrew £42,000 out of my bank account, totally without my knowledge, and tried to sort of conceal it. Eventually, I found out. Yeah. Now, I learned a valuable lesson, and actually, even under those circumstances, there was some positive that came out of it, because I learned the lesson that whatever happens, keep your eye on the money. Yeah. Regardless of what autonomy you give someone. Now, no matter how many businesses I have, I shall have access online or on my phone, and I keep my eye on the money every day. Yeah. Because if I'd have done that then, I would have realized, because when I did look back, it started off with a £7,000 withdrawal in September, and by December it had gone up to 42,000, and that's when I realized. So yes, that really, it kind of drove a bus, you could say, through that relationship. Yeah.
Did you keep the person on?
No, I terminated a contract. I did my best to get some of the money back. I did actually get half of it back. And then I wrote the rest off. And I saw it as, I could have taken it to court, but I saw it as a lesson learned. What happened to me again? So there was still some positive. And interestingly enough, for a long time after that, even when I passed her, she lives in Brixton, she literally passes my shop from time to time, I would still say hello. Yeah, knowing that, because she's basically confessed and sort of said, I'm really sorry, and I had problems, and I sort of tried to be understanding. But the bottom line was, you stole.
You've forgiven her.
Yeah.
So where do you get that forgiveness from? It's because of the lesson learned.
It's a lesson learned. Yeah. You know, you can
Just
go to
the
university and take out
it won't happen again.
Yeah, take out a loan to study. You know, in life, you learn these lessons. And the important thing is, if it happens once, you know, that's the way it goes. If you allow it to happen twice, then obviously it wasn't worth learning the lesson in the first place. So, you know, you then put checks and balances in place. But in terms of the relationship, I had, as far as I was concerned, I had a lot of value. I placed a lot of value on that relationship, only to really discover that it wasn't reciprocal. You know, she didn't obviously value the relationship. But again, you know, this is one of those things that happens in life. And it probably saved me, because now, you know, my numbers that I might be dealing with might be larger, but that will never happen to me again. So yeah, it's always good.
That's a great introduction.
Yeah. That's perfect. Do you want to introduce the other two?
Yeah. Now, on that note, we have someone who's a specialist in relationships, Pastor Shalina Celestine, and I'd like to invite you on to introduce yourself, sis.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and it's definitely great to be a part of the evening discussion. I'm quite fascinated. I was just happy just to sort of lean back and listen to the conversation at hand. A really interesting one, and certainly one that we're influenced by in life, which is the dynamics of a relationship. So certainly a little bit about myself. As you can see by my title, I am a pastor, and I have been now for several years. I spend more of my time, however, in the field of public speaking and so forth when it comes to the Christian arena. So I'm very much an evangelist and move from different places or abroad. And then I guess a day-to-day practical, as I'd shared earlier, I do work for, let's put it this way, a very large technology company whose logo is a fruit. So I'll let you figure that one out for yourselves. And with that in mind, I work as an inclusion and diversity leader. I specifically look after all of our Black employees across the UK. And certain parts of EMEA. And then just finally, also as well, I am a counsellor for relationships and marriage. I am qualified, but also just a lot of life experience, and I've certainly got my own testimonials in that area as well. So that is me, otherwise known as Shalina.
What made you get into counselling for relationships? That's a
really good question. I think by default, I am a people person. I'm just madly in love with people, and I'm very.
Oh,
Right.
That's fine. So just to rewind, for me, I'm very much passionate about people. My academic study is my degrees within sociology. So that sort of galvanized. And I think from a personal perspective, I am married, but I'm married for the second time. My first marriage, which is a part of my testimony, did not work out well at all. And I think based on the experiences that I had within that particular relationship, that really spurred me on, that I knew that if I was suffering in silence, I did not want that experience to happen to anyone else. So for me, that really was the catalyst to saying, I want to be able to help others.
That's beautiful.
Hi, Shalina. Sorry. I'd be interested, and obviously tell me if I'm being too personal as well, because as a fellow Black woman, we do find that, our relationships go through a lot of struggle and a lot of pressure. And for whatever reason that is, and I'm going to probably verge on it's a topic that I would really like to spend the whole night talking about, really.
Okay.
So, Black women are deemed as angry Black women, yeah?
Right.
And that's in the workplace.
Right.
And also in relationships. Lots of my male friends will be like, oh, Black women are really difficult. Like, you guys, you always want an argument. You always want. And it would be interesting to hear your point of view as a relationship counsellor and as somebody that's had a failed marriage. What do you think that those stereotypes or those comments are true, or are there elements of truth in the comments that Black women can be quite angry and hard to work with?
Sure. Really, really interesting question, and especially because we are in Black History Month as well. So my personal view on that is that, number one, it is a very strong stereotype that's in the Black and brown community, and has got lots and lots of historical background to it. And certainly tonight we don't have time to go through all of that. But I think that where some of that is definitely built from is just the general dynamics that we have between Black men and Black women. And this is something that has gone on for I don't know how long. Now, are there angry Black women out there? To be quite honest with you, I'm quite sure that there are, to be honest with you. But at the same time, there's angry Black men as well, angry white women, angry white men, Chinese, and so forth. However, I think that sadly, from a social structure, there has been an overemphasis and an overfocus specifically on Black women. I believe that Black women, just like everybody else, they have a right to be angry. It's an emotion to be expressed. However, it has been used from a negative point of view to almost attack Black women, and one that sadly has created quite a strong stigma. Now, there is a dynamic and definitely a conversation to be had as it pertains to how Black men perceive Black women. Now, it is one, if I'm really frank, I think what gets highlighted more is sometimes that Black men have this view of Black women, that they're angry, as you said, difficult, etc., etc. But that just isn't the view of every single Black man. And that is not the experience of every single Black man. I think that it's a very strong narrative that sadly is consistently pushed, is consistently exalted, and we're not actually hearing the balanced view. And I think second to that is that because as Black women we hear that, that's what makes us angry, because that's certainly what makes me angry. It's not that I'm an angry Black woman, but I'm angry at the narrative of the idea of an angry Black woman. And I think sometimes that's where we get that mixed message. Absolutely, Black men, there is a desire of what Black men want, but there is also a desire of what Black women want as well. And I think sometimes where it gets mixed up is it's very much a case of every Black man is going to want what they specifically want, and every Black woman is going to want what they specifically want. But I think it's about the agenda consistently pushed to the forefront. And the whole dynamic of relationship is a very interesting one, and I believe it is a journey to find that right spouse or that right partner for you. And just to wrap this part up, I think it was Basil that mentioned the idea of friendship. That, as I always say to a lot of people that I counsel, that's where you need to start. I always say to people, marry your best friend. Okay. When I got married for the first time, I was very young, and I was definitely influenced by my environment, and that was from a church environment, which is not necessarily negative, but I was looking for a spouse based on what I thought the church thought that I should be doing. But then, and that didn't quite work out, and I'm sure if we get time, we'll go into that a bit more. But then when I married for the second time, I married my best friend. I'm a Jamaican and he's a Nigerian. On paper, that's not supposed to work. But because we are the best of friends, it absolutely works.
So, Pastor, should I call you Pastor or?
No, it's fine.
Yeah. What would you say is the secret of having a really good, healthy relationship, man-woman relationship?
I think the key, again, to go over it again, the absolute starting ground has to be friendship. Okay. I think a lot of the times, and again, I had this, I guess, notion, a narrative, an idea that when you meet someone, it's about trying to get into the title of who you are to that person. So whether you are a girlfriend or whether you are a partner or whether you are a wife, I was trying to live out the title more than actually experience the actual relationship. So when I met my husband, Namdi, one of the things that we both were really on the same page with is, what is it that you actually want? And to be really frank, when we were dating, that is the question that we actually asked each other. And we were comfortable to ask that question because we were friends. And I remember Namdi actually saying to me, Shalina, what is it that you actually want? What is it you're looking for? What's your goal? And I remember as a woman thinking, just slow down, calm down. It's a bit full on. But the reality is, as per what Nam said to me, so Shalina, I'm going to be upfront with you. You need to tell me what it is you want. What is it you're looking for? What's your vision? Because if I can't supply that, or if I don't even want to do that, there's no point us falling in love, getting into the whole, I love you, you love me, etc., only to find that further down the line, we want different things. So because we were really, really great friends, we were able to have great communication, amazing openness to say, this is what I'm looking for in a relationship. This is what I want. This is my long-term goal. This is my vision. Each other to say, yeah, I think I can do that. And then as we took the journey, falling in love was so easy. Falling in love, we weren't doing it, sort of like one eye open, one eye closed. We didn't want to get to that point where it was like somewhere down the line we find out some crazy madness about each other, and it's like, you know what, this is not working out. But then it's difficult to separate. Why? Because we're in love with each other, don't want to let each other go, but we also know that we're not right for each other. So definitely I would say it's about the dynamic of a great friendship. And if you decide to get married or you're in that long-term relationship, that friendship is the absolute glue that will keep you together. Me and my husband, we don't argue that often, but if we do have a disagreement, I promise you, because we're best friends, we can both look at each other and just say, do you know what? Just forget it, move on. And that's because of the dynamics of friendship.
Shalina, can I just say before we move on to one of the first of our guests, you've been blessed to find love twice, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so you've walked down the aisle twice. I haven't been so fortunate. But the race is not for the swift, it's who can endure it. You know what I mean? So
yes,
I'm here to learn from your people like yourself. You've been married twice, right?
Yes, sir. I have.
One was a friend also, right?
So the first one, this is what I would say. I would say, yes, he was a friend. However, I would say within that relationship, I was more focused on the relationship and being the girlfriend and being the partner more than being the actual friend and building the relationship on friendship. It was more like, oh God, I like you, so attracted to you. Do you know what I mean? What gives
my question was not, Shalina, my question is not really how you got into the relationship. It's how the relationship ended.
Yeah, okay. So
why did the relationship end, the first one?
Okay. So how the relationship ended was when we got married and we got into the relationship, things started to manifest within his personality that I paid no attention to when we were dating. And when we got married, suddenly all of these things started to manifest. By that time, it's too late.
What was the top 10 manifestations?
So top 10 manifestations for me was he physically, we'll go back. Mentally, it was almost like he checked out. And he was in the house, but very much preoccupied with other things. And so like when I wanted to talk, chill, catch up on the day, it was always like, oh, I'll get back to you in a minute, that type of thing. Secondly,
no communication.
I wouldn't say no communication because we did have it, but it was very much, it was minimal, and there was a switch, and I could feel that level of communication had changed from, oh, let's meet up, let's go on a date, to I'll get back to you in a minute, or I'm kind of busy, or what is it that you want? So that dynamic in the communication, I'd say, definitely changed. Then that went to a physical absence, in terms of when I was expecting him to be home, then he wasn't home. And then as the years went on, that then started to manifest in, oh, I'm at work for a couple of nights to a week. To where are you?
Because you start with 2, I just need 8 more.
No,
we can't get it.
I can give you all of them.
So Shalina, we've all had bad relationships, okay? And I suppose that's the struggle in a relationship, is having a bad relationship. But how do you build yourself up after that bad relationship? Because when you're in a relationship and the other person makes you feel inadequate, the other person may treat you a certain way, because it's rejection, isn't it? If your husband or your partner's not coming home, it's a form of rejection. If your husband or partner might be saying quite negative things towards you, for you then to build and find the courage to leave, which you did, and then at that point, how did you rebuild yourself? Because a lot of women are in relationships where their confidence is just being battered and bruised. And they stay in the relationship because mentally they feel like they're not worthy.
But their confidence was in the relationship?
No, but some women stay in relationships and be treated really badly because they don't have confidence to leave, and they also don't have confidence to believe that they'll find anybody else.
That's what
Shalina obviously has. She's found someone else. So how did you, what steps did you take to leave the relationship when you realised enough was enough?
Sure.
Before you do that, I still would like to know how.
I'm going to answer your question, Marla, because I know that I'm going to answer both questions. So number one, just in reference to what our host is actually saying, you're right. Some people do stay. I stayed.
By the way, Shalina, we're all hosting.
I'm the student. I'm not.
I'm the main host. But no. So what I would say is, I was her. I stayed because I didn't want to leave, because where was I going to go? I didn't want the shame, and I didn't want the embarrassment. And then second to all of that, how do you leave? And also I knew the cycle of abuse. Okay. My relationship then it got to a point of mental abuse, verbal abuse, smashing up my house. There was rife adultery, all kinds of madness. But for me, it was a cycle. You get angry, you shout at me, you scream at me, smash up my house, then you calm down, then you'll say you're sorry, and then we're back to normal. So for me, believe it or not, I was more comfortable with that more than leaving and going through the shame and embarrassment that I felt was going to come from my own community. So for that reason, I said, there is no way that I'm leaving. So, so just to speak to that point. So how did I get out? Literally, for myself, I very much had to lean on my faith. I remember sleeping, and I remember just one day just hearing this voice say, literally, you can either stay, or you can either go, or you can just live this for the rest of your life, from now to the grave. And by that time, there was adultery that was rife. There was a child that had been born outside of my marriage. I had lost a fallopian tube because of all kinds of craziness. So I had to dig deep in myself to say, do you know what? I want out, but I don't know how. And it literally was a step of boldness. Now, what would have helped me? I think what would have helped me come out sooner, to be honest with you, is the idea of our community, and I mean our community from a point of view of the church community and maybe Black and brown community, having a culture where we check in with each other and cultivate it's okay to talk. There is no shame. There is no embarrassment. Because I'll be frank with you, what kept me in abuse was this fantasy that if I leave, my community, church or Black and brown, is going to say, why, go on, all that stuff. Yeah. And I said, I'm not dealing with it. Mm-hmm. So if someone had maybe reached out and said, Shalina, are you all right? How are you? If anytime you want to talk, I'm here. I didn't get any of that from anybody in 15 years. So it was a case of who was I going to go to? I think for myself, what would help is we need to be our brother and our sister's keeper at all times in life. Even if it looks like the relationship is sweet, even if it's just a case of you just say, do you know what, sis? Anytime if you ever needed anyone, I'm here. Oh, brother, I'm here for you. Just let somebody know, because you really have no idea what they can be suffering with behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Shalina, also, just need to touch on, this is such a vast topic.
Yes, it is.
So there's a lot to delve into, but I know we're not going to get there. But really, just want to focus on your job role, inclusion and diversity leader for one of the well-known technology brands. And congratulations as a woman of colour achieving a position like that. Just really quickly, just three things, like how important and what are the key things that you feel within such an establishment? Where do you kind of see relationships in an establishment like that? Because having worked in a retail background, it was very cliquey, and I was the only Black woman as a buyer in the retail world, like that I knew at the time. What is your kind of take on the importance of relationships in the work environment, and what advice could you give people out there? Because again, Black people are deemed as, you don't socialize enough, you don't come out to the pub, you've got a Peter in the office and a Peter outside of the office. So what are your quick takes on
Peter inside and outside?
Basically, they're saying that a friend of mine, I went for lunch with him the other day, he might be watching, I don't know, but he said that they felt that he was one person at work and one person outside of work. And he agreed. He said, I am, Disha, I am this completely different person, because he didn't feel that he could bring his culture into the workplace. So he was two different people because he didn't feel that he could be his authentic self in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Probably what I'd say to that, and I'm glad you probably touched on it, because that's one of the things that I was going to talk about. It's one thing that we talk about all the time at work, which is about the importance of being your authentic self and bringing all of you to work at all times. And I think I would say keep it very simple. One of the things that we are very passionate about is conversation. And we use conversations literally as a tool. And I would definitely encourage anybody out there. I think that's something that I think all of us can do, because guess what? This is what we're doing now. And I would say try and find a way to start a conversation. And when you start that conversation, maybe start with something really simple. I remember certainly what I did when I came into this space, which was I'd love to be able to share my culture. Or I'd love to be able to share a bit more about me. And sometimes you have to start off with speaking the same language as everybody else in terms of what everybody would understand. So it could be around start a conversation that's maybe quite generic, something that everybody can actually relate to, and then build it from there in terms of, well, I'd love to share about my culture, but also I'd like to understand about your culture as well, because I think one of the greatest things that we can all say, even right now in the middle of this pandemic, and as tragic as it was, that in the midst of where we are now, we are becoming very much more socially aware of our social identities, especially because of the lockdown and especially because of what we've seen happen in America. And whether people wanted to or not, we were faced with looking at racism in a way that we've never, ever had to look at it before. And so with your conversations that you're having, it's a great opportunity to say, shall we talk about it? Has anyone got an opinion on it? And it also acts as a really great place of education. So I would definitely say, start with a conversation, start with something that's very generic that everyone can relate to, then lean in a little bit more, and then maybe start to say, can I share my culture? Can you share your culture? And then start talking about things that are maybe relevant and things that we're all focused on right about now. I'll share a quick testimony. I put together a group within our organization, and it started off literally with just 5 people. And that group went from 5 people to 20 people. And within less than 3 weeks, it ended up becoming 1,700 people all having a conversation about race. And it was because we made up in our minds that we wanted to have an authentic moment. We wanted to be honest. And the reality is, if we are going to do the best work of our lives, then we need to be able to be all of ourselves. And get comfortable also with having what we call uncomfortable conversations. So I'd say conversations, general, add in your culture, share their culture, education, and talk about what's relevant.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Shalene, that's wisdom. That's really good wisdom. We're going to go to Joseph and bring in Joseph now. Joseph, can you hear us?
Good evening.
Good
How are you
evening,
guys?
my brother.
Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. I've been mesmerized by the conversation. It's been very stimulating. And I'm sitting here with pen and paper, just taking note and learning. So thank you.
You look very, listen, I feel underdressed. You look splendiferous and magnanimous, sir. For making an effort.
Much appreciated.
Yes,
Thank you.
So just tell us a bit about who you are and why you accepted to come on today, just to share a bit about your struggle to success, where you are, where it all began, why, what, how. Just tell us a bit about who you are.
Okay, I'll try and keep it brief, but I'm Joseph Farragut.
Take your time.
I'm an entrepreneur. I've always been one. I'm a visionary. I'm an investor in people, and I think my story is one of almost failing your way to success. Sometimes it's about not knowing exactly what you're doing, but working out enough ways of not to do it, and then by definition, it allows you to get much clearer in terms of the direction you're going in. So my early background was quite different in terms of my entrepreneurial journey. So it started very, very young. So with my parents. So my mother, she owned a hairdressing salon, a couple of hairdressing salons, and my stepfather at the time owned a shipping company. So I used to hate the fact that every summer holiday and every break, my friends would be playing outside, and I would have to go to either the shop to wash and set hair and take money, or go to the warehouse, which was horrible and rat infested, and drive a forklift truck. But one of the things that I realized is that was my early stomping ground for understanding more about business. And I've listened to what everybody said during this conversation, and I think there's one thing that is unanimous. You know, business is about people. And I think there's not enough of an emphasis on the fact that business is about people. Yes, it's about supply and demand. It's about profit and loss. It's about, asset versus liability. But at the end of all of those things, the common denominator is people. And I think one of the strengths in business is when you can begin to look past what you want. And as Basil said earlier, you add value. I would add another term to it. I'd call it a win-win. In business, I try not to do anything that allows the other person to lose. I try and always establish relationships where there's a win-win, simply because of one simple thing. In business, I'm not getting involved in business for the short term. I'm doing this for the long term. And if you've got foresight and if you've got vision, you'll understand that if you step on your partner or, you know, your supplier, or you try and squeeze that little bit extra out of that person or that business before your time, what ends up happening is you'll end up shooting yourself in the foot. And I think my early experience in business, where I wasn't my own boss, taught me that really, really well. My background is property investment, as well as I'm a specialist when it comes to emerging markets. So I've sold property all over the world. Initially, we started in the UK, looking at regeneration areas such as, you know, places like Manchester and the Green Quarter, places like Salford Keys, places like Leeds, looking at things like student investment property, as well as normal residential buy-to-lets, a little bit of commercial property as well. And then that opened up into a few other areas. We focused on secondary markets, such as Spain and Portugal, and then more tertiary markets, such as, well, at the time, Dubai was a tertiary market, although it's probably now a secondary market. And then Africa, the whole of the Caribbean and Africa. And I think there's a couple of things that happen here. Yes, it's a lot of experience, but the thing that's unanimous is, again, it's people. When you're building portfolios for people and when you're selling property to individuals, one of the things that I decided a long time ago is that I would try not to sell. I wanted to add value and demonstrate the benefit. Now, these are terms that are used all the time now when it comes to business. But when you're building a portfolio for somebody, for an individual, I wanted to sell things that I would be happy buying. I wanted to demonstrate the benefit of something that really, really, really has a value. And what happens over time is you develop trust. And I think that's one of the pillars of any solid relationship. It's the trust. So it came to a point whereby some of my clients wouldn't even ask me what it was. If I made the phone call, they'd just say, yeah, Joseph, yeah, if you recommend it, I'll buy it. And that taught me.
Joseph, could I just butt in there? I just want to ask you a quick question.
Of course.
You said trust, okay?
Yeah.
But obviously trust, it doesn't come immediately. So could you give us a few examples or give the viewers a few indicators on how you build trust in a business relationship? Because obviously you're dealing with property, you're dealing with large numbers, you are a black male, I'm assuming that you're of African descent, and there are negative stereotypes with our black. Nigerian? Are you Nigerian?
I am Nigerian, I am black, and I am young. Yes. There's a lot of things.
Joseph?
Sorry, I didn't hear that part.
Or Yoruba?
I'm Yoruba.
Right. So how did you overcome that? How did you give us and the viewers some indicators? Yeah.
I think one of the things is, in order for you to trust somebody else, you have to trust yourself. And one thing which is very important, you've got to be yourself. There are a lot of people who are walking around as shells and shadows of, you know, their representative is always speaking. Instead of them speaking, their true voice speaking. And I think one of the things I learned a long time ago was the strength to be me. And that means I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I might be liked by everybody, but I have to be true to myself. And this is a good starting point when it comes to building repertoire, building relationships with people, because people can see through lies. And even if they can't, even if you do a good job in the beginning, it's such hard work to maintain the lie for such a long period of time when you can just be yourself. And what I've come to find is that because of that strength within your own character, people gravitate towards you more. In terms of building rapport, as you said, sincerity is something very important. So before sitting down and speaking to somebody, I mean, even now in the financial terms, there's a term for when you're selling a financial product, you've got to do your KYC. It stands for know your client. But I always done a KYC in a different sense of the word. I always knew who my clients were. I knew their full names. I knew, what football teams they supported. I knew the names of their children. I knew where they wanted to go on holiday. And I didn't do it as a sales tactic for me to sell more. I was genuinely interested. And when there's a genuine interest, when there's genuineness, and when there's integrity that's shown, this really begins to help to build rapport, alongside making sure that your yes is your yes and your no is your no. So if you turn around and you say something to somebody and you say you're going to deliver on something, things happen. Basil, I'm sure you know this. Pastor, is it Shalene? Is that right, Shalina? Sorry.
Yeah.
You being a pastor, I'm sure you're going to know this firsthand. It's so important that when you're dealing with people, that you are honest, and that that you show integrity. And I think when it comes to my career, even if I haven't been able to do what I said I was going to do, it was about managing that expectation. So way before anything imploded or exploded, I would explain exactly what was going on. And because we're all human beings at the end of the day, we all understand that things can happen. As long as there's sincerity within that, I haven't really had bad examples. I don't have any bad experiences where I've been very honest to a client and they've turned around and totally, slammed the door in my face. I've always had experiences whereby honesty has been the best policy. I know it's a cliche, but in my experiences, it's always manifested, and it's come to pass. It's worked. I hope that answers your question.
Look, yeah, you did. So looking at because the topic selected has been relationships and
Struggle
and struggle to relationship struggles, whatever. So would you say that the transparency, the honesty is also something that you bring into your personal relationships? I'm not sure if you're married or single, but would you say that these are key qualities that you would promote for personal relationships as well?
100%. I think. Say that again, Marlon.
You're married.
I once upon a time I was married.
That was like...
Okay, brother.
Once upon a time I was married. I'm not married anymore.
You know about relationships, right? Obviously.
I do. And to be honest with you, I am not an expert when it comes to relationships in that respect. Like I said, I failed my way to success, and I'm still on that journey. I'm still on the potter's wheel, so to speak. But I think when it comes to relationships, transparency is key, whether it is business or whether it is pleasure. And I think there is a very interesting divide that's been created where people say, don't mix business with pleasure. And I've always found that quite an interesting one, because I feed my family through my business. How much more personal could it be? So for me, I think the pillars of any solid relationship are universal, irrespective of whether you're speaking about business or whether you're speaking about pleasure or you're speaking about a relationship.
Can you hear us?
No. What did you say? Sorry.
No. What I was saying, you mentioned value, you mentioned trust, you mentioned communication. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. If there, because you're up until the point where you're talking about your business and stuff like that. Yeah, are you're a parent?
I am a parent of
You
two
got
beautiful kids.
2 children, yeah. How old are they?
17 and 11.
Wow.
17 and 11. Boy or girl?
Boy 17, daughter, she's 11.
Right, yeah. So, growing up a family, a young family. You've been married before, and now you're not. What could you say? What could you say to a young brother like me? Yeah, to be like you. Yeah, to add value, to communicate more, to trust, which is a massive thing for people like me and a lot of listeners, I'm assuming. Trust.
This is down to a personal journey. So number one, I wouldn't advise anybody to be me, because there's only one me and there's only one them. And I think you need to be the best you that you can be. So that's the first thing I'd say. In terms of things like trust, this is a much bigger conversation, and it's one of the reasons why I agreed to come on the show today. In our communities, we don't share enough. And the sharing we're speaking about, relationships and this, that, and the other, there's a much more basic level that we don't understand. So when it comes to culture and the subcultures, and when I say culture, I'm not just referring to your country of origin or where you were born, but the culture that you express within your house, or the culture you express, with your partner, or the culture you express at work. A lot of the time, we are taught to live in shadows, not to be our true, authentic selves. And I think when I've gone into other environments, some of the people that I've seen who've had relative successes have been more of themselves. So they don't have to suddenly juxtaposition between Joseph at 9 a.m. and then Joseph at 9 p.m. It's just one in the same person. So I think one of the most important things is to know yourself. To know yourself is very, very important, and to be yourself, and to not worry about the persecution of someone, to the left or to the right of you. To have the strength within your own convictions, to stand for what you believe in, and to speak that truth. This is something which is very, very important. This is my personal journey. Again, a lot of the things that I'm sitting down and speaking about is what I've gone through. It might not be the same for everybody, and I think everybody's is going to be different. But some of the things that I've seen, definitely, I'd say integrity is very important, and being yourself is very important. I hope that answers your question, Mark.
Beautiful.
Yes, Joseph. And you know what? I'd just like to sort of agree with your perspective in terms of being authentic. It's interesting. In business, I've developed some real valuable relationships.
Yes.
With a real diverse set of customers, clients, suppliers, where we started off by having very little in common. Yeah. But other than an absolute respect for each other's culture and background. And over the years, that has paid great dividends, because it's introduced me to into communities that I would otherwise not know about or not have access to. And it's increased the level of understanding within our own community by others. And I think created more respect of the way that we do things, because there are certain values which are kind of universal, regardless of where you come from, and integrity and respect and authenticity, I think, are really, really important, as you say, in any relationship, and being yourself. And as you say, I might not be everybody's cup of tea, but as long as I'm true to myself, I think that's the best that I can do as an individual. But I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, Basil, to be everybody's cup of tea.
At that point, if that's all right, just something really quick, if that's all right. I think with what's been said, I think what's also really important is something I was talking about to a group of women the other day, is about the ability to be vulnerable. Because I think sometimes what stops us being authentic is the struggle to be vulnerable, because of whatever image or whatever title or whatever perception or narrative we feel we've got to live up to. And I think that if we allow ourselves, and I remember this group of women were actually saying that in relationships, especially with relationships with their partner or their spouse or whomever, that they really struggled. And that's actually something, going back to one of the points earlier, that is said sometimes about Black women, is that they're tough, as we talked about earlier, angry. And this group of women were saying that they just struggle sometimes to be vulnerable. And I think there's a difference of, let's say in a relationship, you're upset with someone and you don't know the why. But if they're willing to be vulnerable to say, do you know why I'm upset? Because of X to the Y to the Z, it can give context, and then maybe your frustration is not as much because you're like, okay, so that's why you're upset. So I think the ability to be vulnerable is very important to relationships. Not all, it might not necessarily work in the business field necessarily, but I think in the social relationships, vulnerability is really important. I remember when I met my husband, I mean, and he was just like, it's okay, just be you, just be all of you. And it was a moment where I felt like I could just take the mask off, as it were, and just be vulnerable with him. So I think that does play a part as well.
Pastor Shalene, just to add to what you're saying, I think it definitely translates into business. The word I'd use is courage. In order sometimes to be vulnerable, you've got to show courage. And courage is when, you're faced with something that doesn't feel quite right, but you're going to do the right thing anyway. And, you've got, when you open up and you become vulnerable, this is when I've had the biggest breakthroughs. Some of the biggest breakthroughs I've ever had is when I've literally just, face in hand, I want the ground to open up and swallow me, but I still face it and say, well, you know what? This is what I am. This is what I'm saying to you. And what usually happens back is it almost is like you give the other person permission to be themselves, and this is where you have massive breakthrough.
Right. Thank you so much, Brother Joseph. It's been a pleasure.
Don't go no. Let him stay there, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure listening to you, man. And I think that we're definitely thinking on the same wavelength. Now, I'd like to introduce our third guest, and that's a gentleman that I've known of for more than 20 years, 25 years, and I've watched from a distance. He's a great social entrepreneur and a life coach, and I've heard his name called so many times in so many circles. And it's a pleasure to welcome you on to tonight's show, Viv. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Viv Ahern. Amun.
The speaker.
How you doing, sir?
Your mic.
Unmute
yourself. Can't hear you.
Viv.
Unmute.
Mike.
Can't hear you.
Unmute himself.
Yeah. You're on screen. I'm not. That's all.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself.
Can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Oh, come on, Viv. Yeah, unmute yourself.
Yes.
There you go, Viv.
Yeah, I lost the screen. That's what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to see you, my brother.
I could hear. I think I could hear Theo in the background going, "Come on, Viv, you know how to unmute." This is the kind of help that you appreciate from your brothers, you see. The compassion, and the empathy. Yeah, I really enjoyed listening. Like everybody else has said, it's been a real pleasure to lean back and just allow the food to wash over me. It's really, really. I think it's one of the many positives that have come out of the whole lockdown, on-off pandemic cycle that we've been in, is this opportunity for us to take time and pause to reflect and to really talk to each other, because I think we're all too busy being busy to actually get on and do that before. So it's really enjoyable. What do you want me to say about myself? I've been around, feel like I was here in primordial times. That's how I feel. And I've done a lot of things, I think in many respects, I'd like to see myself as a Renaissance black man. I've done a bit of this, a bit of that. I've taken, I've gone wherever my passion has taken me. So I trained as a psychotherapist, and I've run services in most sectors over the years. And I'm in my third season now. My real passion now is Africa, the financial services sector and technology. I haven't left the other things that I've been able to master along the way. I've brought them along with me. So it's I'm happy to be here.
Hi, Viv.
Yes, sister.
Hi. Viv, obviously you've been around for a long time.
Easy with the long time bit.
Not
too much of that.
Okay, you've been around, okay, and you've been involved in some real integral projects within the community. And, you know, as tonight's topic is about relationships, what can you offer our viewers, you know, in the sense of what can you say has been really important in building the relationships that you've built within all the projects and the companies and the services that you've been involved with?
Yeah, thank you. I let me just say that there are 4 pillars that drive me. I've been thinking, and you're constantly coming up with different ways of describing how you do what you do in order to be able to function. And I spent a lot of time reflecting on what the key elements, I believe, for me. And at the moment, I'm working with 4 pillars. The first one is self-knowledge. I think that is key. You know, you've got to strive for a PhD in self, 100%. And the therapist in me, you know, tells me that every day. I've just finished doing 4 boroughs as part of my tithing for Black History Month. And it's important, for me anyway, that I tithe into our community during Black History Month, and that I focused almost exclusively on those young men and women who are on the margins that everybody forgets about, when in months like this, the corporates are busy leveraging off of our Black skin as part of their social purpose. And when I've been talking to them, you know, what I've been doing is getting them to really get into what is fundamentally core to their success and their ability to be self-perpetuating. And that's the knowledge of self. It's critically important. The second one that I believe flows from self-knowledge is self-discipline. Once you know yourself, you know how you function, you know what your triggers are, right? You're able to then make decisions and hold on to those decisions because you understand what makes you think. You know what your combination is. I see people trying to stop this, trying to start that, and they're constantly failing and getting frustrated with themselves. But I realize the reason why you can't do it, you can't master yourself, is because you don't have a knowledge of self. You haven't worked out the secret combination that enables you to get on and do stuff when you want it to happen. And then moving on from that, I think, is this idea of, you know, clarity, clarity of purpose. It's a big one for me. It might be the purpose that's to do with the season that you're in right now. And I said my 3 key ones: money, tech, and Africa. And I use lower level language when I talk about economics. I say money because people automatically connect with that. When you say economics, it takes a little while for them to, you got to unpack that. But money, they get. And that's what frames how I get up and function every single day right now. But 10 years ago, it was different. But I have a higher purpose is connected up in my name, Amun, which means to take that which is hidden and make it known. So me, you know, my children, my wider family, everyone who comes into contact with me, I say, look, you know what? When you get that food and that knowledge, share it. Don't just hold it to yourself, share it. Right? And in a way that is masterful, not shoddy. Master your brief and then articulate what you've learned more widely. And then the last one is the future mindset, which I think is so important in our community, especially now where people don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Cultivating a future mindset is important. Because without that, you can't vision beyond where you are. And being where you are, especially if it's not a nice place, you know, it becomes a hellish place. But you see, when you can vision forward, you know, through books or, you know, associating yourself with individuals who have been places and seen things, right? That's when you're able then to plan and move forwards. When you don't have a vision, and when you don't have a future mindset, you're stuck in the present, you're stuck in the past. And many people will hear me say, I can't be around you all the time if what you're constantly doing is going back over the stuff that scarred you, that marked you. So they're the four components for me. And as you all talking, and Marlo's like, give me the grind, stop coming with that pretty talk, come with the grind. I think, he's right. If you take somewhere like Haringey right now, next month, 20,000 people at least are going to be made redundant. Furlough done. They're not in any employment. That's weeks before the holiday period. And when we come out of that period into January, it's going to be hell for people. And a disproportionate number of those individuals will be like us and be vulnerable women. The domestic abuse and the violence in the home's gone through the roof.
Sorry, Viv. So how do you, you've just mentioned the unemployment is going to be about 20,000. So how would you emphasis in Haringey? How would you put the emphasis on relationships? So if people have already built relationships within their community or have built relationships with their friends or family, are you saying this is the time now that they're going to need to really utilize the relationships that they've built? Because I know as a mother, I've got a network of friends and family that I've worked on having a relationship with in order to facilitate and support me in my times of need. So are you saying that now is the time that relationships are really going to be tested, or they're really going to be respected?
I'm saying that there are many, many vulnerable people out there right now that are not seen or heard. So they're not going to be the ones watching this program. They're not going to have any family or friends, or as Shirlena was saying before, they will be silenced, that we rendered silent as a consequence of the circumstances that they're in. And so I'm speaking to those who are listening, and I'm reaffirming for us here that it's incumbent on us to go out of our way to make contact and be in service within our community during this very challenging time. I mean, that's my starting point. And then I say to those individuals who feel isolated, now's the time to go out your way to begin to foster and build relationships. But it's easy to say. I mean, we're all sitting here, we're very comfortable, we're all doing relatively well. I can't see anybody's bank account, but we're here and we're engaging. But there may be many people out there who are listening and hear what we're saying and agree, but still can't do anything about it. And so it's that our community, especially in London, can be a very isolating community, a very inward-looking community, and a very hostile community. No empathy, very little empathy, and very little compassion. And great if you're in an extended family and it's tight, but that extended family again tends to look in on itself and not be concerned about those outside.
Viv, this is a show of inspiration, education, and information. Yeah, I've known you for probably over 30 years, and I'm interested in the listeners hearing a bit about who you are from the beginning. I was saying, it's great that you shared these 4 pillars and the future and money and knowing self. But what about when you were unsure about yourself and in that valley of indecision and trying to work your way, and you probably felt abandoned, betrayed, rejected, all these things that mess with our mental health, especially in this time where people, as you say, are losing their security, their stability, losing relationships are breaking up, people don't have no trust, people not adding value, people are trying to subtract rather than add to people's life. People are waking up. The bad mind is very much real and it's growing. Social distancing, we're dividing on a daily basis. You know what I mean? So speak to that. Speak to that from the beginning. Like, how did you?
Look, again, as I was listening to everybody, I thought to myself, I'm just going to talk straight and clean. I don't think it needs to take a ton of words when you're just being authentic. I wake up insecure every day. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's not like it's stopped. And it will be with me until I'm dead. There were things that happened to me when I was a child that will always be with me. And thankfully, I've been in therapy, and I practiced in a previous life as a therapist, and I have the tools that I can use to get me out of that madness. Maybe the first 15 minutes or half an hour when I wake up in the morning and I'm back in that madness, I've got the tools necessary to step me out of that into a positive space. And that's really where I'm coming from when I talk about others. I can present here as somebody who knows what he's talking about and self-assured and so on, but it takes daily work. And as I was talking here, I looked at, picked up a couple of books. This one here by Alice Miller, Thou Shalt Not Be Aware. This need for us to dig back into self is critically important to not only our survival, but our well-being as we move forwards. A quick story about myself, just to illustrate the point. And this is a story I tell over and over again. Marla will have heard it probably. And the 4 groups of young people that I spoke to, when I say young, in their 20s, so men predominantly, Haringey, Forest, Hackney, and Lambeth. And what I said to them is, when I was 3 years of age or so, I'm not sure exactly how, my mum used to take my child mother because she needed to go to work during the day. My dad used to do shift work and he'd be sleeping during the day. This child mother used to make me eat her shit off the floor. She made me eat her shit off the floor, and I was eating her shit off the floor, she would say, "This is all you're worth. In fact, you're worth less than my shit, and that's why you're eating it." Now, to tell a 3-year-old child, that and be driving that into his subconscious, obviously, at the end of the day, it's going to have impact. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel shame. I felt confusion because I didn't understand at that stage. It wasn't until I went to school that the shame came. Because then I understood, well, actually, you're a hyper masculine black man. You ain't supposed to let anybody treat you like that. And the shame was so acute for me that what I did was I buried it in my subconscious. So it was though it never happened. But when you bury them kind of things there, what they have a nasty habit of popping up when you least expect it, and it used to manifest itself in violence. And usually when I saw people being abused and mishandled in the way that I was as a child. But I didn't make the connection. The rage was just come up and I would react extremely violently. I've gone on my path and I've had my therapy and I'm able to communicate it here. Today it doesn't bother me, but I might talk about it in a week's time and feel emotional about it. And it's understanding these things are not things that you get over. These are things you come to terms with and you find a place for. So it's not something that I feel shamed about anymore. It's my rocket fuel. It allows me to move through my life and my day. And I feel it's really important that we're able to help others in our community do exactly the same thing. And we've in the middle of launching an organization called OMA, OMA-community.com, which is a network of organizations and professionals committed to ensuring that people in our community, in the Black community, get access to therapy, Black therapists, so that they can go on their journey too.
Thank you. That was powerful.
In terms of moving forward, like, tell us something about what you're doing. I know you mentioned briefly Omar, yeah. What else are you doing? You say you're in Haringey working with, was it Haringey where you're working with students?
No, so again, I part of being in service is doing what is needed. So during the lockdown period, one of the things that became clear is that there are big gaps that haven't changed. I've gone away and done other things, and I was in a previous life as a policy expert. I worked for both Ken Livingstone, advised Ken Livingstone and Boris Johnson, and so I understand a lot of the policy challenges and how they've been for us as communities and so on. And one of those around mental health and education and all the rest. I've gone off and done other things. I've come back 20 years later and nothing's changed. And in some respects, things have gotten worse. So some of these networks are just obvious things to establish. Omar one example, but the other one being Black Men for Change, which is a network of 60 black male-led organizations from across sectors, corporate sector, finance, you name it, as well as public sector organizations that are running programs with other young black men and women across London in the first instance, and then it will be more widely. So I'm just being in service. And so connecting with these young guys, as I have done across those 4 boroughs, building a relation, not going in and giving a talk and leaving, but going in and saying, look, this is what's gone on with me. This is what I've experienced. If you want my number, if you want us to have a relationship going forwards, then I'm here's, but these are the things, you know, that we would need to understand and agree with moving forwards. And I won't repeat them because many of your speakers have already touched on that. Too many of our young people are just looking for an individual to give them a bringing. You know, they're estranged, and it's only going to get worse going forwards. You know, people like Soros and other individuals, you know, can be doing 42%, you know, increase on their existing billions, but the rest of the normal people that are out in the community that got no assets are going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, it's great to hear about some of the initiatives that you are part of and some of the things that you're planning. I mean, on a very individual level, what would you advise, you know, the average person watching this show? How can they get involved? How can they make change and create change within their own communities?
Join an organization, join a network. People say, oh, I've done it before and it didn't work. Join another one or create your own one. You know, it's the idea of asset-based community development. Asset-based community development argues that everything we need in order to meet our own needs exists within our community. Yeah, more than 60% of black people work for public sector organizations, government and all the rest. We run this country. But when we leave work, for whatever reason, we leave our expertise, our competence and our discipline, our networking, our partnership working in the office. And then we come into the community and go back into our house and we don't engage. So things are really bad and then we'll get worse. I believe it's the time for us to mobilize.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's very, very true.
Yeah.
But let me just, Basil, I know I can see you're rounding up, but let me just revisit on the Black Men for Change thing. It's really important that our people in our community can see black men working jointly, you know, high profile black men. You've got Leroy Logan, who's just got a film out about him and his book. His film's on Channel 4, and a whole range of other individuals working collectively, collegiately. We're not in an organization together. We're in a network where individual organizations collaborating and doing that in a very high profile way so that people can say this is happening all the time. I mean, I'm a part of many black networks, male and otherwise, business-wise and so on, but most of them are invisible and they want to keep themselves invisible. I'm saying we need to see more visible networks doing stuff jointly, because that's where the inspiration, that's where the juice will come from.
Viv, yeah, I agree with what you just said there, and this is why this platform is very, very important. It wasn't something that we kind of forced, it's something that generically happened, and every week it's growing and growing, and we've, you know, I thank God that Shalina, Joseph and yourself made the sacrifice at such short notice to be a part of this show. I'm a part of many groups, you know, but there's one group in particular, similar to your Black Men for Change, that I'm a part of. It's called The Collective. There's about 120 men in this group, and we came up with an idea to do a subscription every month, and the money would go to a cause that we all agree on, and it would be a social cause, yeah. So one of the guys suggested that we Christmas is coming. It's going to be very hard for a lot of people that we make some donations to some families or some organizations. So we set a target that we generate five grand by the Christmas. So this was last week, Tuesday. by Friday there was 11 grand in the kitty. Yeah. So that showed us, we're not clapping each other, patting each other on the back, but it showed us that, with the little that we got, none of us are Donald Trumps, but if we work together, there's a lot we can do in a short space of time. But again, building a relationship is going to take a lot of work on self. I'm in the front of the queue on that one. A lot of discipline, as you said, a lot of visioning, and what tithing? You said, was it tithing? What's the fourth pillar?
Well, it's the future thinking is the fourth, but the starting point is the self-knowledge.
Self-knowledge.
Everything starts with that.
And that's what this lockdown has helped me to do, to focus on what I like, what makes me, what I don't like. Because it's easy to, identify what you don't like. It's not always easy for me to identify what I do like. But being in around networks like this, conversations like this, helps me to take away great wisdom and knowledge and strategies, information, inspiration, and understanding. So thank you for that. Joseph, can you just come in and share a little bit about what you're doing now? People can reach out to you, make contact with what the great things you're doing locally, globally.
Definitely. Viv, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing and being so open and being so real. It's refreshing to see another brother, come to the floor to do all the stuff that you've done, and to still come out and say, listen, I have to do this every single day. It's the truth. And anybody who turns around and says they don't, they're just, they're not being real. And I think it's very, very important, because we all go through ups and downs, and it's very, very important that we share some of the jewels and some of the gems that keeps us, on that up. In the morning, I will sit down and I'll listen to my frequency music. I'll make sure that I meditate. I'll make sure that I pray, but I also make sure that I eat certain types of foods. These are the basic habits and practices that assist with you keeping at your optimum level. Marla, when you were speaking about the organization that you were part of, the organizations you were a part of. Something that my mum taught me a long time ago. She said, charity begins at home. And I think it's where you turned around and you said that, within the community, we've got the jewels inside our own community. And I believe this is 100% the truth. But what has happened is that old English strategy of divide and conquer has seeped its way into our countries of origin, seeped its way into our psyche, and it's operating on a regular basis in the mentalities of the people within our community. So the truth of the matter is this: we sit down and we talk about social, relevance and this kind of stuff. And I don't get me wrong, I love that type of conversation. But the biggest issue that we have is to have economic relevance. We need to not just be a voice that talks, but we need to own our own institutions. We need to begin to have money. And the thing is, basic principles, it's a biblical principle, in the sense of we don't need, you mentioned, Marlo, you're not Donald Trump. You don't need to be Donald Trump, brother. You've got something better than Donald Trump. You're loved by the people around you. You're amongst strong black men. And once we begin to share some of the tools within the community, and we eradicate the suspecting your brother of doing something, and we begin to trust each other a lot more, collectively, we'll have, number one, we'll have a voice, but number two, we'll be able to do something about it because we'll have that economic empowerment. So you asked me to share some stuff that I'm doing. I own a magazine. A magazine is called The Estate, and it's a magazine that's focused on property, people, culture, travel, and lifestyle. It's a luxury-based magazine, but it's allowed me to begin to understand some of the issues that we have as black people all over the world. One of the biggest issues that we don't really understand is how diverse we are. When you're saying hello to another black man, sometimes we assume that we know who that person is because they've got black skin and they look like us. That's not the case. We have to begin to share more. We have to understand the different dynamics that exist, the different demographics that exist within our own environment. and begin to appreciate those dynamics. Once we can begin to appreciate those dynamics, we can begin to share, and that's where the trust is built. And then we can begin to explore some of the opportunities that exist within our own backyard. Do you realize? I don't think people realize this. In the Black community, there's a mentality that there's no money in our community. Well, that's really interesting, because outside of the Black community, every other community wants to get into the Black community because there's money in the community. Makes no sense, right? But it makes perfect sense. They've gotten, for some reason, when it comes to us as a collective, by that I mean Black people, whether you're of Caribbean descent or of African descent, irrespective, if you've got that pigmentation in your skin, if we begin to understand our own individual relevance and we begin to share and buy from each other and trust each other, this is going to be the beginning steps, the first initial steps to changing the status quo. So I also own a platform which is called Blux, and Blux it stems from the magazine that we created. Now we've got 16,000 subscribers on the magazine. The magazine, we began to share stories on the platform that I wanted to hear stories about people like me, or people that I could look up to who looked like me, or people who were lovers of people like me, whereby the stereotype and that narrative was changed. So the magazine, we started featuring different articles on products, on services, on various different things that exist around the world. Again, it wasn't just a magazine that's focused on the UK, because again, one of the things that we do sometimes is we focus on this tiny little, fishbowl, when the conversation is much wider. We began to share.
Sorry, Joseph. I know you're saying. I think the problem is with the community is, yes, us as a community do have a vast amount of disposable income, and that is very visible within luxury brands. It's very visible within the beauty market. We are one of the biggest buyers of all these sorts of products. But I think where the issue lies is we don't have any visibility, a bit like what Viv was saying, that we don't come together as a community and visibly show what we have, like especially the people in the community who are doing well. The people in the community who are doing well tend to shun away from their community and go elsewhere.
But you realise that's part of our program. That's part of our program.
But this is what the platform's about. It's about relationships and showing people. Also, we've now got this this division between Africa and the Caribbean. Africa is thriving at the moment, right? It's like booming. Ghana, Nigeria, the whole diaspora is doing so well. But I feel like there's a division. As a Caribbean woman, I feel like we're not taken seriously within our African counterparts for whatever reason that is. So I think us as a community really need to start working in with ourselves on relationship building and understanding that, yes, we're all one. It's not about you being African and I'm Caribbean, and so I feel like, yes, there's a lot of money in the community. Is it visible? No, not really. A lot of people don't think Black people have much money, but that's because we shun away. As soon as we start making money, we want to move to more affluent areas where we are the minority. We want to take our children out of a school and move them to different schools where they're the minority. So I think our whole mindset has to change as Black people. And I remember I had a flat in Tottenham, and as soon as I could, I ran away. I didn't want to be there. I moved to a better or more affluent area. And I look back now and I desperately regret it with all the regeneration that's happened in Tottenham. But that's it. You're kind of indoctrinated to believe once you get to a certain success level, you now have to move away, which that's changed now. I must say, we are seeing a change, but what we're not seeing is visibility of the unity between us as Black people and the successes between us as Black people as well.
But can I? Sorry, come in, Joe.
Sorry. It's interesting to say that, because there's a word that keeps on popping up, and that word is community. And I see that broken into two different words: common and unity. And one of the biggest issues that we have is that, as you've already expressed, you've got lots of different parts within our communities, Caribbean, and before you even have a conversation about Africa and the Caribbean, you've also got other conversations like Jamaica and Trinidad. There are so many different things within these subsets that we haven't really spoken about. We know they exist, but we haven't aired them out. It's almost like when you've got that dusty rug, and it needs to be aired out. It needs to be shaken out. All those bugs need to be gotten rid of, and then you can start. And I think that's what needs to happen with our community in terms of the conversation. It's the reason why we set up a magazine, because I was tired of listening to a narrative, doom and gloom, poverty. I'm a person. I believe in frequency. I believe in focusing on certain types of things for other things to manifest. And if you're always hearing stories of doom and gloom, pity and poverty, it's going to be very hard for you to get out of that situation, especially because that's not everybody's experience. Now, you just said that you moved from out of Tottenham to another environment. Now, the funniest thing is, there's nothing wrong with that. It's called having an aspiration. I think the problem is where you're not amongst other Black people, where there's not enough of you in those environments.
And I miss it now. I do miss it. I can't buy green banana. I can't buy plantain. I have to come back to Tottenham to get everything. So, like,
the green banana is the problem.
And to be honest with you, I've been there as well. But I think, again, having those conversations and beginning to build communities where you've got people of like mind. See, again, remember, within our community, not everybody's going to get along. And it's okay to have the different hierarchies and the different levels within our community, as long as that community recognise that there is one whole and we're all a part of it.
You see that in Wembley, don't you? You see that in areas like Wembley, where there's a huge Indian, Pakistani community, and they definitely have hierarchies. And you'll have millionaires living there, and you'll have people on the breadline living there, but they live as one. And I think this is what tonight's show was about. It was about forging long-lasting, trustworthy, transparent relationships. And I think if we can do that as a community, I feel that we'll be unstoppable. And we can see that being done with the Jewish community, with the Indian community, with the Turkish community. And I think what the government's trying to do as well is really cause a division, because where we had Brixton, which was highly Black community, where we had Tottenham, highly Black community, they are regenerating it and really causing us to just be scattered everywhere. And I feel that us as
but even with that as an example, that's gentrification. If we were a little wiser in our communities and understood a long time ago the power of what an asset was, they wouldn't have even been able to push us out of Brixton, because most people would be homeowners.
Yeah,
okay.
I agree.
There's a lack of, unfortunately, there's a lack of wisdom sometimes in our communities where we don't listen enough to each other. And what we're doing in this whole conversation today is we're beginning to share. We've got a magazine which has got 60,000 subscribers. We're about to launch one of the first Afrocentric membership cards, okay, that will give you access to hundreds of brands across the world at a certain type of level. Now, that is for a specific type of person, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, we founded this business on African principles. So one of the things which is very important is to always give back. If we believe that if you're in a garden and that garden is feeding you every single day, you have got a duty to replenish that garden. In the modern day, they call it sustainability. We've been doing it for donkey's years. So
okay, Brother Joseph, I'm sorry to cut you, but we have gone over time. Yeah, it's amazing. Can you just put out your social media, how people can find out more about your magazine? Just what's your website?
Okay, the website is www.estatepropertyguide.co.uk, and for the membership platform, it's www.blux, which is spelled BLUXE, global.com. And I'm Joseph the Dreamer, so that's a normal hashtag, but Dreamer spelled DREEMER. So hopefully you'll be able to get us on there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for this, man.
Viv, thank you so much for being part of this event today, and you're much appreciated. Pastor Shalina, again, Thank you so much for giving of your time. And so on behalf of myself and my co-hosts, we'd just like to say, Marlo, sorry. Thank you so much. Odisha, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing and
Thank
speaking.
you. Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Thank you. Thanks a lot.